Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grain Market Blast with myself and the glamorous of capital G goddess of grain herself, Angie Setzer. It is Tuesday, the 2nd of September, all day. Yes, we're already in September. No, I don't know how it's happened. But before we crack on, I will get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on this space of session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed the glamorous Angie Setzer. How are
Sweet
you, my love?
you. I'm super. Thanks for
Thanks for
asking.
asking.
How are you today?
Oh,
How was your
you know what?
weekend?
My
Yeah.
weekend was good. It wasn't as long as you guys across that side of
Yeah.
the pond.
Yeah, you
You know,
had one of those a week ago though. So you got to
yeah,
do it
yeah. That's
first.
why I can't. You may not realise it from what's seen in the market commentary and stuff, but the UK is currently still standing. The gilt market is trying to change that, but we'll see. It's also raining, so yeah, summer is officially over. But yeah,
That's a bummer.
it is what it is.
Yeah, whenever I hear about your gilt market though, I automatically think of hogs here, like pigs, like gilts are
Ah, yes, yeah,
lady pigs, I think. I don't know. I'm not a pig
yeah.
person. Anyway, I love bacon. So,
Oh, who
on that
doesn't?
note,
Who doesn't? Well, we'll get to that.
right.
Move on quickly.
The markets suck today. Happy. That's it. That's all you need to know. We're
Welcome back.
17.
Welcome
Yeah.
back. It's a
Welcome
new
back to
month.
the long weekend. We're 17 minutes in and we can shut her down now for the next, 5 or anyway,
Stop the count. Stop the
yeah,
count.
that's we don't like this, but yeah, as we speak currently, corn's down about a nickel. It did surge on Friday. Beans are down about 17 cents. They did kind of trade sideways on Friday, but closed positively, kind of going into the weekend. Wheat also, closed positively going into the weekend. It's currently down 11 this morning. So if you thought you knew what was going on Friday, congratulations. You have no idea, because now we're kind of doing the opposite thing. There were some rumors going around Friday, just to kind of explain a little bit. And this is one of those, like, nothing, I think this was a perfect situation of someone having no clue, what was driving a market and just kind of attaching something to it. So like by the middle of the day on Friday, the rumors were circulating that China was in buying corn, which is, I mean, maybe they were, like, but, it seems kind of silly considering that they, would kind of probably buy soybeans first and foremost before they come in and buy corn. And they, probably are going to wait to do that. And so I think, Friday's rumor of China coming in and buying corn was more of the market's up really big. What could it possibly be? And someone's like, China's probably in. Like it just really wasn't, there weren't really any true indications that China was in. But here we are. So, bullet point wise here today, just kind of starting at, where the hell is all of Brazil's corn is kind of where I want to start, just simply because we had a conversation. So if you hadn't had a chance yet, check out my page. I retweeted it. It's on YouTube. You don't have to, listen, you don't have to watch the whole entire thing, but just kind of listen to it if you could. I think there was a really super important, point of conversation in it, where Eduardo was kind of discussing, what all is taking place in Brazil's cash market. And so one of the things we're constantly hearing about in the corn market is that, exports are potentially overstated. Brazil is going to have to export this corn, yada, yada, yada. Well, guess what? Brazil really kind of is. I mean, they're really working to, export relatively decently. You're looking at Brazilian corn exports so far year to date, 23 million metric tons. They're really not too awful far behind, but the U.S. continues to win this business. And so the narrative, and even in myself, I was kind of thinking like, okay, well, the Brazilian farmer's just not selling. That was kind of the conversation for a while. Like the Brazilian farmer is not putting corn into the pipeline, and that's why the U.S. corn is so much cheaper. That's why we're getting all of this business. Well, to be completely honest, and Nick and I kind of had a bit of a heated debate, if you will, or maybe he thought it was heated. I wasn't heated, but I can sound that way sometimes over, this idea of everyone kind of saying, okay, well, Brazil's going to have to dump corn into the global pipeline at some point, and that's going to hurt U.S. export demand. It's not necessarily the case. What we're seeing now is like last week, 1 million metric ton of Brazilian corn was sold by the Brazilian farmer, not the U.S. farmer. That would be weird. But was sold by the farmer in Brazil last week, 1 million metric tons of corn. And 70% of it was soaked up by the domestic market as soon as they sold it. So basically, if you have 10 bushels for sale, 7 bushels of those are going to be eaten by the domestic market. I asked Eduardo in this conversation on Friday, I was like, where is the corn? Like, if you have 145 million metric ton corn crop, right? We should be drowning in corn. We should have corn coming out our assholes. I'm sorry, but we should. We don't. And he's like, well, basically, if you look at Mato Grosso, you've had such a build in infrastructure along the 163, the main highway right there. You've got a lot of other places too, ethanol plants and things like that. You have had it built up so much that you can basically soak 1 million metric tons of corn a day into the domestic, like it goes into the infrastructure. They have figured out how to make it disappear. And the ethanol margins are so solid. You had announced late in the day on Friday that a group out of Brazil, basically they're in the process of 5 additional ethanol plants, getting them approved, 3 of which are finalized and are in progress being built. It's another 6 million metric tons of demand. And so this morning or Friday afternoon, AgriInvest had kind of built out a bit more in the way of like, where the hell is Brazil's corn? And basically they're like, okay, August exports, Brazil sold an additional 1 million metric ton versus a year ago. The U.S. is still getting significant demand, right? Ethanol demand is up nearly 1 million metric ton just for first half of August from a year ago. And since April, we have added 8 million metric ton of additional corn demand in Brazil that we didn't have a year ago. That's 315 million bushels of additional demand in the last 5 months. So, this argument that we are going to see, that exports are overstated, that we're going to need, if production comes down, that, demand is going to have to follow. You have room in residual. Yes. Potentially you have room in feed if it gets expensive. But this idea that Brazil's going to eat our lunch or have to dump a bunch of corn into the marketplace is getting quieter and quieter and quieter. At this point, if China were to show up, I'm not sure how we'd be able to supply an additional amount of demand just because global demand continues to grow. So if you get a chance, check that out. That's one of those things. Any questions or anything on that you want to?
No, but I have put it up in the Jumbotron and also just given it a repost.
Oh, well, you are the best. But yeah, check it out if you have time. I think it was definitely worth it. And I don't do all the talking, so I always like to push those out more because people are way smarter than me are filling you in on things that are importante. So one of those deals, also looking at one of the questions that we had talked about, was how does Brazil support this type of bean demand? Like we've seen China come in obviously and buy extra beans. How do they support this and support their domestic demand? And basically Eduardo was like, they can't. So it'll be interesting to see just kind of how AgriInvest, how Brazil, that's Eduardo's from AgriInvest, but how Brazil, is able to supply this additional demand. Or if in fact, I think one of the things we tend to forget about is that you do have optional origin purchases that can be made. And at this point in time, I feel like we're just going to continue to watch over the next few weeks here. If China continues to avoid U.S. soybeans over the next 3 weeks, which is likely at this point, we had no news over the weekend. We didn't get a flash sale this morning or anything like that, which is part of the reason why soybeans are under pressure. If China continues to avoid U.S. beans, basically what you're going to see happen is Brazil's beans, nearby beans are going to get more and more and more expensive, while the U.S. beans get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until each company in each country can't ignore the arbitrage opportunity, basically. And so we have to remember that it's as recently as the spring of 23, when China started canceling a bunch of U.S. purchases and sourcing them instead out of Brazil because it was that much cheaper. They're smart. They're the best merchandisers in the world. You know what I mean? Like you have bright minds here. It's not like just because they bought out of Brazil, they can't arb this position. It can't, there is a potential there for optional origin and some of these other things, but we're so many weeks removed from needing to do that. You're not going to see them. It's political. It'll be an interesting game. But I think the market's job obviously is going to be get cheap enough that, the U.S. farmer or the U.S. commercial or the U.S. whatever is forced to put the stuff away. But then you also have it get so expensive in South America. Like at this point in time, their crushers are short nearly 10 million metric tons of soybeans to get them to January. Like they're going to have to try to source 300 million bushels of soybeans, and there's less than 10% of available supply able to be bought from the farmers. So
where are they going to get them from, Angie? Where are they
the U.S., I would bet, because we'll have a lot of them and they will be cheap based on how the cash market is flowing. And so the market always solves its problem. Like the market
Exactly.
is efficient. Sometimes cash grain oozes more than anything. And I think Jeff Middleton, I don't think he's on, but if he is, he said something incredibly intelligent, the other day, basically where he's like, your demand stays the same. Here it is. The world is going to consume roughly the same amount of soybeans, no matter how economically inept any player is in the trade. Flows will get reshuffled and efficiency is lost. And that is all you need to know about cash grain. And so we'll see how it all plays out, but obviously until we see some sort of resolution or some sort of sign that China isn't going to snub us entirely, you're going to have beans under pressure. Lastly, kind of looking ahead, we'll be watching weather really closely. A lot of talk of frost potential here later in the week. I'm going to bet, most every
Frost.
year,
Oh,
like it's the F word. It is the summer. This shouldn't be happening. The earliest frost I've ever experienced was like the third week in September, and that was enough of a kick in the junk. I'd prefer we not experience one the first week of September. But I will say the good news is around here that drought and disease has pushed the corn crop along far enough that we may not have frost hurt it at this point if we had one, which I say kind of tongue in cheek. Like I said,
by that you mean like literally the damage is
yeah,
done.
there's a lot of damage to be done. It's basically you're just kicking this poor crop in the face as it tries to drag itself across the fence. Yeah. He's dead. He can't take it anymore. But so we'll see. I mean, obviously, it would hurt. Like, you're not going to have a killing frost. You're not going to have that sort of situation by any means. But, it is something to be watching, because it could result in lighter test weight, and people will argue test weight doesn't matter. And you'll say that until you put, 100,000 bushel at 52-pound test weight in the bin. Of it. So sorry, got a phone call in the middle of my joke, but, so we'll see. We'll be watching weather. It kind of ruins it when that happens, but we'll be watching weather really closely. The finish has been exceptionally dry too. And one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of folks say lately where they're like, well, at least the cool finish is helping beans. First off, beans are a photosensitive crop, so you're not really going to drag the maturation process out in soybeans. Secondly, soybeans actually kind of struggle a bit more if you have, nighttime temperatures well below, that 60-degree, 50-degree mark, where we've been sitting in the 40s for much of the last couple of weeks at night. Kind of stupid, if you ask me. But, I have no control over it. So we'll see. We get export inspections out today at 11 Eastern. We'll get crop progress this afternoon. I'll be looking to see if, there's a lot of reports of Iowa's crop really going backwards in the last week due to disease pressure and some of these other things. So it'll be interesting to see if that shows up in crop progress. If it doesn't, choose your fighter. It either doesn't because it's not there, or it doesn't because crop progress is stupid. A or B. Have fun. But other than that, we'll see if this market decides to turn itself around, and try to work back higher. But so far, kind of a real poor showing to start the morning.
Well, we hope this changes for everyone all concerned.
Yes.
Andrew, thank you so much as always. It's good to have you back after your long weekend. Again, I can't take the mickey too much because we had a long weekend the week before. But listeners, welcome back. Welcome to the Thunderdome, as Andrew rightly called it. Whatever you're doing today, if you're out in the field, stay safe. If you're in front of screens, keep it tight. We hope, as always, we've added some value. Or I say we. Angie obviously does all the work here. I'm just like just one of you guys. I'm
the pretty face. That's what you're the pretty face, right?
What a face for Twitter Spaces. Thanks.
It fits.
Whatever you're doing, guys and girls, have a great one, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.